Alright guys, so we are going to take polynomials and narrow them down a bit and not talk about all of them because that's overwhelming. We are going to focus on quadrilaterals. So quadrilaterals are a four-sided figure. Kind of the thing that we know about quadrilaterals is that their angles all sum to 360. Now, when it comes to quadrilaterals, there are lots of them. You can see them all right now. But they're split up into these different families. So all the things that you see on the screen right now are quadrilaterals. They're all four-sided figures. They all have angles that will sum to 360 because they are all part of the quadrilateral family. Okay? But once we start breaking this down some more and taking a look at each individual sort of branch of the family, we get some unique properties. So there are a lot. I'm going to go through them and then I'm going to add some pictures of our notes that you guys can take as your assignment for today, tomorrow. So the first sort of family that we have, and really the only unique factor that quadrilaterals have is that their angles do sum to 360, but we have our parallelogram family. The parallelogram family is unique because it has two opposite sets of parallel sides. So because rectangle, rhombus, and square are all part of that family, they also all have two opposite sets of parallel sides. Another branch of the family is the trapezoid family, and they have only one opposite set of parallel sides. So that's why they're different. And right trapezoids and isosceles have those as well. They're just subsets of the family. And then our last branching family tree here are kites, and kites have no opposite parallel sides. And kites are like legit mathematical term for zero opposite parallel sides. So it's not just a thing you fly in the sky. Okay, back to base. When we talk about parallelograms, another fun fact about parallelograms is that two of their opposite sets of parallel sides are also congruent sides. So because rectangle, rhombus, and square are parallelograms, they also have two opposite sets of congruent sides. Now trapezoids do not, but they do have this line that you can draw in the middle called either a median or a mid-segment, and if you remember, that's when we connect midpoint to midpoint, which I'll have a picture of that for you guys in a minute here. And so because right trapezoids are trapezoids, they have that as well, and isosceles trapezoids do also. Now kites, their kind of unique factor is that they have two sets of adjacent congruent sides. So the top two sides and the bottom two sides are congruent to each other, but they don't have anything parallel. Okay, so some other true facts about the parallelogram family is that they have two opposite sets of congruent angles. So not only do they have sides, but they also have congruent angles. So rectangle, rhombus, square has all that. Now trapezoids don't have anything new to them, but in their little branching family right here, the right trapezoids are special because they have two right angles, so those two angles off to the left hand side there. And isosceles trapezoids are unique because they have two legs that are congruent. That's probably the trapezoid that most often comes to mind, and the legs are the non-parallel sides. So if you're isosceles, that means that those legs are congruent to each other. Now another fun fact about kites is that they have one pair of opposite congruent angles, and you can kind of see that if you ignore the short diagonal in the middle there. What you have on either side is a left and a right triangle, and those triangles will be congruent. And so that means that angle D and angle B right there are congruent angles. So that's kind of a fun fact. Okay, back to these. So another fun fact about parallelograms is that adjacent angles are supplementary, which makes sense because we got parallel stuff, and when we have parallel lines, we have same side interior angles, which add up to equal 180. And so since rectangles, rhombus, and square are all parallelograms, they all have that as well. Now, right trapezoid, got nothing new for you there. But back to our isosceles trapezoid, because the legs are congruent, like the two non-parallel sides, that makes the base angles congruent, so like the two bottom ones and the two top ones are congruent. Another fun fact about kites is that when we do have those diagonals drawn in there, those dashed lines that go from corner to corner, they are perpendicular to each other in the center there. We can see your little 90-degree box. Alright, some more fun facts. Back to our parallelogram family. When we draw some diagonals inside of our parallelograms, they will bisect each other. And if you remember what bisect means, that means cut in half equally so that each side of the diagonal is the same, which you'll see a picture of that in a little bit. Now, because a rectangle and a rhombus is a parallelogram, the diagonals bisect there as well, and square is also a parallelogram, so the diagonals bisect. Still nothing new for a right trapezoid. He's kind of boring. But an isosceles trapezoid is kind of fun, and if you draw the diagonals in an isosceles trapezoid, so corner to corner, they are actually congruent to each other. So like the whole diagonal is congruent to the other entire diagonal. Speaking of diagonals in kites, they are still perpendicular to each other. So there's that. Another fun fact though that you can see on there is that the short diagonal is actually bisected. The long one is not though. Okay, more fun facts. It's a lot. Parallelograms, oh, nothing new there. Diagonals still just bisect each other, that's fun. But special to a rectangle is that the diagonals are congruent. So like the isosceles trapezoid, the entire length of the diagonal in a rectangle is congruent to the entire length of the diagonal going the other way. A rhombus also has a fun diagonal feature that is unique to rhombus, and that is that they are perpendicular to each other. So like the kite, they cross at a 90 in the middle, and then when they hit the opposite angles, they actually cut those angles in half. So they bisect opposite angles. Now, because a square is sort of the product of a rectangle and a rhombus, so a square is really both a rectangle and both a rhombus, it has both those features. So the diagonals are congruent and perpendicular and bisect the angles, which makes all the cut up angles inside of a square 45s, which is kind of fun. You get 45, 45, 90 triangles. Oh my god, I forgot about that. That's so exciting. Anyways, still nothing new about a right trapezoid. Nothing new now for an isosceles trapezoid. And nothing new for a kite. So, when it comes down to it, basically the big things we want to remember is that for a parallelogram you have two opposite parallel sides, and what makes rectangles so unique, it is a parallelogram, but it's better than that because all the angles are congruent, so each one is 90. Now a rhombus isn't a rectangle, but a rhombus is a better parallelogram, and that's because all sides are congruent, so all four sides are the same. But they're all slanty still. And again, a square is a parallelogram. It's also a rectangle and it's also a rhombus, so it's the baby of those. That's the little baby. Okay. The important thing to remember about a trapezoid is that you have one set of parallel sides. No little thing didn't pop up there. But a right trapezoid is a special type of trapezoid because it has two right angles in it. And an isosceles trapezoid is a special trapezoid because the legs are congruent. And then a kite is special or unique, not only because it has 0 parallel sides, but really it's special because it has 2 adjacent congruent sides, which makes it better than just some general quadrilateral. Okay, so let me pop out of this PowerPoint real quick and show you guys the crazy notes that I have for you. So I will post pictures of these, or if you want to pause in the video, that works too, but I filled all this out already and I'm going to attach the document if you're able to print. These are all of the properties that I just said, and I drew nice little pictures and gave you little formulas that go with them. So we got parallelograms, rectangles over here. Because a rhombus is a parallelogram, it has all those features, but then these 3 that are additional. And we got square. Square doesn't have anything new or that is really unique to square because a square is just a product of all the things it was. So parallelogram, rhombus, rectangle. Like for me, you might remember that I have a very large nose. I have a very large nose because my dad has a very large nose. So same idea with a square. Because square is the baby of all those guys, he has all the features of all those guys. Then we got our trapezoids. So trapezoids have one pair of parallel sides. They have that mid-segment thing we talked about, which here's the fun formula for that. Then the isosceles trapezoid is special right here because it has these three unique things. And then the right trapezoid wasn't that great. You can add it at the bottom here where it just has the two right angles, but like nothing really more than that. And then we have our kites. So we have our two adjacent sides, our opposite congruent angles, diagonals perpendicular. We got some right triangle stuff. It's really fun. So your homework is really to just take care of those notes, and then Friday I'll post your assignment that kind of uses some of these features.